I always think that sound when they say this meeting's being recorded, it's like so robotic. It's
It
like
is a little bit
this meeting
robotic.
is being recorded. Like,
We're being recorded, everything we do.
I know.
Everything.
What's the big
Everything.
deal?
I know. I got a new iPhone today and I'm like scared to activate it because I'm like, oh my gosh. Like,
What'd you get? Did you get the 12?
you know what? I just replaced my I have I
Okay.
think it's the 11 XS Max. I like the camera on it, so I didn't upgrade to
Yeah.
the 12.
I got the 12. It's pretty amazing. It's like
I know. It's like, why even have a regular camera anymore? You don't. They're
you
not as
know,
good.
no. And on this one, like you can shoot in like Dolby or whatever, like movie style shooting on
Oh,
the
see,
videos.
maybe I should have upgraded.
I know. What were you thinking?
No, I actually literally all I did was it had a big crack in the back and I
Yeah.
replaced it. So I didn't upgrade yet. I'm
Yeah.
eligible though, so that'll be next.
That's good. That's good. Well, listen, thanks for being on. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Well, I saw your profile and I was like, yeah, this has got to happen. This has to happen. DNA sleuth, right?
It's true.
Okay,
It
so
is
let's
true.
get into this. What does that mean? Like, tell me a little bit about it.
So when DNA came out in terms of people being able to take DNA tests at home
Yeah.
for genealogy purposes, I took a test because I was very into genealogy. I did one. And when I got the results back, I saw that there were all of these relatives who had taken the test that were connected to me. And I went, oh boy, this is crazy.
Yeah.
This is going to open up a plethora of amazing stories, crazy stories. And I was pretty much like, oh, it's on, like it's going down. And many years later, probably 5 years later since I took it, maybe about, you know, well, maybe 5 years later is, yes, that did happen as you're seeing in the
Yeah.
news and you can read in articles. But about 2 to 3 years ago, I I I should backtrack a little bit. I started getting hired by people to help them do their DNA and to help them with like their family trees, which was really interesting to do. I really enjoyed
Yeah.
doing it. And then I started finding mistakes in their family trees. Grandpa's not really grandpa because according to
Really?
the yeah, just I mean that's naturally you're looking at these people who your DNA matches, you got to figure out how you're related to them. And some people were didn't believe it. Of course, I'm like, you did the
Yeah.
DNA. I mean, you did it for a reason, so you must have had some belief at some point, and now maybe you don't because it doesn't quite come back the way that you expected it to. Now, about 3 years ago, people started hiring me who were truly they had no idea anything about their biological history. They were adopted, they were donor conceived, they had what I call misattributed parentage. Maybe dad is not necessarily dad, or
Right.
maybe you thought dad was dad, or maybe you never knew dad. Maybe you were raised by a single mom and dad was never in the picture. Maybe you doubt dad is dad. Maybe, then going sort of historically, people would say, my grandpa was found abandoned on a doorstep in 1932. I want to know what his story is. And I could do that. I could look back at the DNA because, again, your DNA contains your parents' DNA and their parents' DNA. And, you can go all the way back and you can sort of triangulate and put together the story, and it's become sort of a phenomenon as you can well imagine. So I'd been doing it for a period of time before it became the phenomenon, so people had been coming to me for a period of time before that.
It's actually really amazing because I've been watching some shows and stuff where like people find out they have all these siblings they never knew about. Or like you said, like they didn't know if dad was actually dad biologically. And I feel like it can be this Pandora's box on some way. It's like, do you see people that maybe like they want to know, but sometimes they don't want to know either?
Well, this is the thing. Before I would help anybody, I ask them sort of a series of questions, like, what would you do if? And I do this with everybody, and everybody who knows me knows that I do this because I kind of ask the same thing, the same sort of general questions. And I ask questions that test them to see how they would react. Well, what would you do if you found out your dad is not your dad? but it's your dad's best friend.
Oh,
You think things like that haven't
I mean,
happened?
that's it has to. Well, we're gonna get into some stories, I'm sure. Like,
But I give them a whole, well, what would you do if you found out dad's not dad and it's this man and that guy wants you to start calling him dad?
wow.
And you're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I just want, you got to be, I've got people who are not prepared and you're not ready yet. And I've got people who are like, I need to know. I need to know
Yeah,
the story. And I don't care it doesn't matter. I need to know.
right. What do you where do people tip on that scale? Is it more of like I need to know or the lack of
Need to know.
preparation? Need to
They
know.
need,
Need to know.
they need to know. They really need to know. Their identities are just a mess. Like they don't feel the in the end, when people do find something out and they're like, oh, I always knew it. Maybe they suspected it but they always knew. They always felt like something was off or they didn't quite belong or something didn't make sense. And then everything makes sense. Now I know why grandma treated me differently than she treated my
Ah,
brother, right? She didn't mean to. She just knew that she wasn't really grandma. She was step
mm,
grandma, and that there was a different, something is always off for these people. And it's not until they learn the story. And sometimes the story doesn't matter what you find. It doesn't matter if some people like, well, what if you find out they're a murderer? And I'm like, well, okay. But again, for the person who's looking, they never care. It doesn't matter. Maybe
mm,
they're not going to want to hang out with them, but they still need to know. And they are just so much more settled after
yeah.
um, every time, every time.
So after you ask the questions, what's the next step in the process? Like people agree to it or what how does it go?
So if I think that they are at a time in their life where, again, we've kind of gone back and forth and they'll work well with me. Cause I don't, some people I'm like, I'm not the right fit for you. Like I can't take on, if you're like, I'm going to find this person and I'm going to show up at their work and and I'm like,
Oh.
oh yeah, no, I don't do that. I don't like, that's not in this game.
No.
So no, it's not, I'm not the right person for you. If you're ready to do it, you're going in like that, going in hot. We have to have an understanding. There's some respect here that has to happen. And so generally once we agree to do it, I have them take, if they haven't already, a DNA test. So generally I would recommend them take a 23andMe test and an
Mhm.
ancestry test. And those are about $100 each. And then I kind of wait for the results of those to come back because really I have to see what's involved. How long is it going to take? I can look right away and say, you've got close DNA matches. It's going to be pretty easy for me to figure out who's who. And I had a woman just this weekend who had a DNA test. Her results came back and she was like, how long is it going to take you? What's it going to cost? She's got all these sort of questions.
Yeah.
And I said, I can't tell you until I see it because I'm going to tell you it's, going to be a slam dunk. And I don't even know what you have yet, to work with. And when her results came back, she was adopted and looking for her biological parents. Her biological mother had also taken a ancestry DNA test like she had, and it was a direct match. I logged in, very top, it says mother, full name
Whoa.
right there. That's the second time that's happened to me in the last 3-4 years.
Wow.
And that's a good sign. I mean, mom must be looking for something too,
Sure.
hoping that you'll test and connect. It'd be very rare if she gave a child up for adoption and then didn't realize that that's going to happen. I mean, in today's day, that that's what's out there.
Yeah.
And I was ecstatic for her. I mean, I said, again, not knowing anything about the woman, I said, this is great. Like your goal of learning your story or finding out your medical history are probably going to happen. This is a very good sign. So, once somebody comes to me, then they do the DNA and then the DNA results come back. And then I kind of just work away until I figure it out. And then I give them the information. Once I find out sort of who it is, who the people are, the players, I do a kind of a background check on them and sort of try to figure out their story, whether it's based on just general open source records, marriage records, if they're alive or deceased, And then I look for the socials. Like that's the big player for me. I'm
I
like, I want
see.
to see what's going on Facebook, you know?
Interesting.
Yeah. And then I kind of go, okay, they look like they're really angry. Every single Facebook post is really angry. Or, I had one woman, she was holding a puppy in her picture, and I go, oh, look at her. She looks so nice. She hugs
Yeah.
puppies,
Huh.
And so then I give them all the information. I'm like, there you go. Like now you decide sort of, here's some tips on what you can do. And I don't call or message people on people's behalfs. They have to be in a place where they can do it themselves. And if they want me to do it, then they're kind of probably not ready yet. And then we play the game of what would you do if, and then they they always want to do the next step, always, regardless. They're like ready to
Of
go.
course.
Yeah.
Yeah. So well, how far down the family tree do you go? Is it based off of how they want to go, or is it how far they want you to go? What is it?
If they're so for now, if I'm, I don't really do so much family tree work anymore for people. I do generally the biological family
I
search.
see.
So if I did a family tree search, I would look at DNA matches, and somebody in there is going to have a full tree. So it's already been done. I mean, there's family
Okay.
trees for pretty much every family out there. We all have one out. Somebody's made one for you.
Interesting.
For looking for family, once I've located who they're looking for, that's pretty much where I stop. Sometimes people will come back and be like, well, now I know that's my dad. Can I get a family tree? I'm like, that's a whole other project.
Yeah.
But,
How have you noticed when people take the next steps, how much of it has been pretty successful and how much of it has been kind of heartbreaking or difficult?
oh gosh, all of them are both. All of
Mm,
them are difficult. All of them are heartbreaking. All of them are really, truly, in some ways, amazing as well. Um, but it also depends on what you consider success.
correct.
Um,
Right. So what do you
what
consider? What's that, or what's their what have you seen to be successful?
I consider a success when they have that, oh, now it all makes sense. Like now I see, I mean, never going to really be close. Let's say their biological father is deceased, so they're never going to meet them. Um, but they learn about him through other people, and they're like, see pictures or learn about his personality traits, things like that. It's when the person says, oh my gosh, I totally get it now. Like now everything makes sense. Now I understand why my mom was acting this way, or I understand why, I was adopted. I didn't know either people. And now I know why I had anxiety all through college. And I met my biological mom, and she had an anxiety disorder. And it's, things like that. Like everything is like, oh, that's success. Not necessarily, because some people, they're like, I don't want to hang out with these people. I have a mom and a dad,
Right. Right.
but I want to know, like, what's the story? How did I become a part of this world? What were the
Yeah.
circumstances? And that's the success, is when people can get all the answers they want. The heartbreaking part is when people go into it and they really want more. They never had a dad,
They
and they
want the
really,
relationship. They want,
they do. They want to be what, like the prince riding through on a horse and rescuing them and being daddy, and all of those things. Even people who are in their 50s, 60s, and 70s, they have these dreams of what it could have been like to have a father, that they've never had one. And they can be faced with rejection, and they can meet the person, and it's not what they wanted. It's not what they imagined. And again, that's sort of part of the reason we play the game, is to prepare them for that. And that's, it's disappointing for them. And then you have people who, they find out, here's mom and dad, but oh my gosh, I didn't realize what's more important. I found out I have a brother.
right.
And they end up having this, like, there's some sibling bond thing that happens between them, because all the drama of what happened with the parents, let's say they're divorced, or let's say there was an affair, or there's an adoption, all of those things it's not part of this. The sibling thing is real, and you're looking at
Yeah.
each other like, I could have grown up with a brother or a sister, or you maybe always wanted one. That's a really cool sort of ending that I love, is when there's sort of connection to somebody, even if it's not the
Yeah.
parents, a cousin or, a second cousin, even really. It's just somebody in a biological relationship.
Is there a typical age that somebody, how should I phrase this? Like the age of the person who reaches out to you, is it wide ranging or younger
You
people,
know,
older people?
so a lot of adoptees, a lot of people who are adopted, um, there is a range, I would say, from maybe 40 to 70, right? Because there's a lot of open adoptions now.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's not so much secrecy and there's not so much
It's true.
adoption. There's not as much adoption anymore, right? After Roe v. Wade happened, there was the availability of birth control and abortions and all of these things. And
Sure.
so there weren't as many people in a situation that they are in, like that there are not as many people in the situation today as there would have been in 1940 when those
Right.
things weren't accessible. So you had a lot of adoptions back then, and you had a lot of women who went away and had children, and those children and the children of those children are the people that come to me if it's adoption
Interesting.
related. Now we have people who were donor conceived, so they were
Oh,
conceived because mom went to the sperm bank. Lots and lots and lots, or same-sex couples who use a sperm bank,
yeah.
right?
I've seen a
Yeah,
story
well,
where some guy has like 50 kids,
there's a ton of I mean, it's
yeah,
crazy, right? And so that you have those people who want to know their story, and they want to know,
yeah,
well, what's the story with me? And so that's a different age range, right? That's people who are, I don't help children, so I don't work with children
sure.
under 18. And you
Yeah.
have anywhere from 18 to, I mean, maybe 40-year-olds really who
Okay.
are in that donor conceived range. And then the people who dad's not dad. Oof. So you have two sisters that got ancestor DNA kits for Christmas, and they both did it. It comes back and it shows them as half siblings, not full siblings.
Okay, let's jump into that. There's a story
That
there.
happens a lot, a
Okay.
lot,
A
a
lot?
lot, a lot, a lot. Probably 10% of the population is unknowingly a product of a misattributed parentage.
So
And I
like
know that's
this
a
the
high number.
person cheated on their spouse or whatever, or they had another person
Or
or
or there's no affair, maybe
mm-hmm.
necessarily. Maybe mom and dad were broken up at the time, right? They weren't married,
I
and
see.
right,
I
or
see.
maybe it was mom and dad really didn't get married in 1972. They got married in 1974. But right, like there's a lot of reasons that happens. Sometimes mom has had an affair,
Right.
and sometimes the child is so young that they don't know that it's really stepdad,
Hmm.
and dad has decided to raise this child as his own, and nobody speaks about
They
it.
don't
And
speak about it.
that's
Yeah.
the most common,
Hmm.
is that people just mom and dad knew, and they just haven't said anything. Happens a lot. I
And
mean,
how
it's
does that
shocking to
come
me.
out? I mean, like,
There are support groups all over Facebook.
seriously. How does that
Yes.
come to a head? Like if the parents don't know that
Oh
their
my goodness,
child
golly.
has found this out and then they confront them about it, you know?
Well, again, there's such a wide variety of stories. Some people take a DNA test for fun,
Yeah,
not expecting to find anything.
sure.
And there's a man who, we have a podcast called Sex, Lies, and the Truth, and we interview some of these people who tell these stories. And there's a man who did an ancestry test for fun, and the results came back, and a woman kept messaging him and saying, "Hey, we're closely related.
Yeah.
How are we related?" He was like, "I don't know." And so she basically, like, as time went by, she was sort of gently like saying, "Were you adopted? Because um, this, do you know your whole family story?" And he goes, "Nope, wasn't adopted. Like, I no, I know mom and dad, I look like my dad. I don't nothing's amiss." And as more time went by, she finally, as like a year had gone by, and she says to him, "Look, my sister had a baby on this day, you know, just making this date up. April 12th, 1964, she gave birth to this boy in this hospital and put him up for adoption. And I think you're him. I'm showing you, I'm showing I'm an aunt to you, basically, on this test." And he was like, well, I wasn't adopted, but he was like, but that's kind of weird because that is my birth date and that is where I was born. And he asked his parents. And at 48 years old, this guy's a cop for the Plano Police Department. He's worked for the bomb squad, finds out that his parents never told him he was adopted,
Oh,
ever. And he would have never known
he
had he
would have
not,
never
for
known.
fun, taken this test. And he is the one who found out. Again, he's a police officer, finds out that his father, his biological father, was in prison for murder and would be for the
Wow.
rest of his life. Now you think, oh my gosh, like that's a horrible ending. But it wasn't, because he was like, I've been to a prison before. I'm a cop. Like,
Yeah.
I've dealt with criminals before. And he went and met the guy. And he was
Whoa.
like, I really liked him. The guy's never getting out of prison for the rest of his life. And he was, he's looking at the parents that raised him as people. He was like, these people lied to me every day for my entire life.
Yeah.
And this guy comes out and tells me all of his misdeeds and everything he's done wrong and owns up to why he's in prison. And he was like, and I kind of liked him.
Huh.
Like, I was like, wow, okay, this guy's being honest with me. These people aren't. And when you
Wow.
first met him, the guy walked in, he goes, I was looking at myself as a 70-year-old.
Oh
Like,
my
that's me.
gosh.
Because he was like, we look so much alike. Like, just again, it's
That's
crazy,
crazy.
right?
That's
Right.
crazy.
But that was not an unhappy ending for him. Like, for him, he was like, it was an unhappy period of time when he was dealing with his parents and all of this. There's a lot that has to go into kind of getting better from that. But it was a not uncommon story. It happens all the time. I probably get 3-4 emails a day from people who are trying to figure out what to do. What something is amiss, something is wrong. There's either they're, again, donor conceived, they're adopted, they want to know their story, what's the process, or a lot of them have found out that something, dad's not dad, and mom and dad are both deceased, so I need to find out who my real biological
Uh-huh.
father is.
Yeah.
So that's
Wow.
sort of the most. I know it happens.
It's
It sounds so
crazy.
crazy, doesn't
It
it? I
does
mean,
sound
it's
crazy. I mean, I
and
have a connection to this kind of well, I do because we adopted our daughter,
uh-huh,
and it's open adoption. Like you said, there's a lot of that goes on. So she knows a lot
right,
about her biological family, except for her biological father. She doesn't know anything because we don't know
mm,
anything
right,
about it. But, I said, we want to help you with this when you're
right,
older
right.
and give you, and by then the tools will be even greater, I'm sure,
They will be.
for doing that.
Right.
But
And
I can't
and finding
imagine.
out and finding out, like, this is a thing. So once she is at a place where, is it a girl?
Yeah, she's
A
9 years
daughter,
old.
daughter,
Yeah.
daughter. Oh, that's sweet. When she's older and she decides to sort of find that out, supporting her is
Yes.
amazing, right? Because
Yes.
again, she's going to need you to
Completely.
support her, because you don't know what she's going to find. And she needs to know that you understand that she needs to know a little bit about her biological story. She has to
Hmm.
know it. It doesn't
Yes.
mean you're not mom and dad.
Of
It,
course.
like, those are the things I say. I'm like, it doesn't change any of that.
No.
But like,
No.
if I tell the, the sort of, you know a different sort of generation of people, they're not supportive of this. They're like,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
raised you, I did all these things for you, and you want to go out and you want to, you know throw all that aside to go. No, that's not what they're doing.
No.
It's not what they're doing.
No. No, not at all. And we had so much great training from our adoption agency about all of this, and we know so many adopted families that we had like this great support system from day one about what to do, how to treat it, the whole thing. And my daughter is so proud to be adopted. She loves it. But we've talked about it from day one. I mean, we got her when she was, a month
That's
old.
the way you do it.
That's why you do it, right?
You do
And
it. Yes, it doesn't. If when you don't see, this is what happens, and this is from my experience of having done a lot of these cases. When you don't from the beginning, these adoptees get that lost feeling. Like, they have even if you say, "Oh, I told them when they were, 18." I'm
yeah,
like, well, I know, but then they had a period of time between 0 and 18 where there's something that
Yeah.
they feel, and when it's addressed early as you can
Yeah.
possibly address it, it takes all of the angst and the anxiety
Yeah.
of it. It just removes all of it.
Right. Exactly.
So I'm very
Exactly.
impressed, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. It's funny. It's like, we have all these items from her birth mother that, we keep on her nightstand and stuff. And we tell her how much she loves her. And we've really had this very strong relationship. But I can't imagine these other things where it's like the half sibling, that thing's strange to me. Like,
It is
I
the
can't believe it's
number
so
one.
common.
I know. And I when people say to me, they're like, "Oh, your work's going to dry up. Everybody knows about DNA now." And I'm like, "Yeah, people are still having sex and they're still lying about it." And it will. Like,
That's
that's
going
not
to
ending.
continue, Christina.
It's not going to end.
People
And
aren't going to
so,
stop that.
no,
No.
they're not. And so, yes, those things are coming out more, but again, there's so much shame that's involved in it,
Mm.
that those stories you're not hearing as much as you would
Uh,
hear the beautiful endings to the I was
right.
adopted and I found, the shows that you see, Long Lost
Yeah.
Family
Oh,
and some of
yeah.
these
I've
other,
watched that.
Who Do
Yeah.
You Think You Are, all of those, they're tear jerkers, right? They're
Yeah,
just
they
like,
are.
I cry on. There was a point where I couldn't watch it. I said, I was in the depth of close friends adoption case, and I was at the very end, and we were waiting for the parents to respond. He just sent letters to them, and he was waiting for them to respond. And this one episode came on of Long Lost Family, and I got about 5 minutes in. I go, turn it off. I can't watch it. It's way too much. I'm like, I'm fragile right now. I just, and
Yeah.
I get, you can't not, but I get
How can
very
you
involved
not?
in the cases.
Yeah.
You can't, I am so thankful that people are entrusting me and they're coming to me for really one of the biggest things that they're
Oh,
ever going to deal with. And they're giving me a lot of room to help them, make some decisions. And I'm always super thankful that I'm part of it. And of course, at the very end, I'm, super professional during the whole thing, and because I don't want to mess it up. And
yeah.
then when it's over, I'm like, cry my eyes out, just because I'm like,
Yeah.
oh my God, that was so sad, or it was so emotional, it was so amazing. I can't, and I'm like, I can't wait to, like, a lot of times people are so happy and thankful, regardless of what they found, that they are okay with me sharing the story,
Yeah.
because I'm like, I have to tell the story about this one guy, and then this happened, and this happened. You know, I love doing it, and it is sort of a weird niche in a odd
Yeah.
job, um, but there are not enough of me. I mean,
Interesting.
there are sort of these search angels that are volunteers that help people find biological family, but sometimes people will come to me. Maybe they're a high profile person, or they're somebody where they're not going to go into a Facebook group and have a volunteer have all of their private information, their birth certificate, their DNA, those things. They would rather hire somebody who's insured to and feel a little more sure that their privacy is going to be protected.
Yeah.
And but there definitely are not a lot of me. Sometimes I'm trying to spread it out. I'm like,
Yeah.
I think you need to go back to the search angels to help you. Like, there's
Sure.
too many. Um,
Wow.
but I do like doing it.
I
Isn't
mean, it
that
sounds
crazy?
like
I
it.
know you're like, what the
This is
heck?
because you're getting like crazy stories all the time. What's the craziest story? Like, what's the big one?
I know. Well, first, can I tell you about one that was in my own family?
Oh my goodness. Yes.
I know. So a couple years ago, of course, I've done DNA, and I know who all my first cousins are. I mean, a first cousin is somebody who you share grandparents with. And so I know who my grandparents are on both sides, and I know who their children are, and then the children of them. So I can tell you that I have 12 cousins, and I have, you know, 6 aunts and 3 uncles. I know that immediate family. And I logged into Ancestry DNA one day. And as I scrolled through, I can see my mom and my dad because they've both taken a test. And I can see his siblings and half siblings. And then I see a photo in a little circle of a man. And next to it, it said Anthony Gomes. And I said, first cousin, never heard of him. And I was immediately knew that it was somebody with a misattributed parentage,
Yep.
somebody who was adopted, somebody who had, I did not know for a reason. And I should know everybody. And I thought, something's going down, right? And I was so excited about it though, because I thought, wow, if this is a person who, let's say he's adopted, wants to know his family story, look who his cousin's going to be. It's going to be me. Like, he's coming right to the source.
He's coming.
And so I sent a message right away and said, I see you don't have a family tree. I don't know if I said I'm happy to share mine to see how we connect. And he wrote back that day and said, I actually don't know. I don't have a family tree. I was adopted in 1968 and I don't know. And I was born in, I believe he was born in Stockton or French Camp, California. And I don't know who my biological family is. And so I wrote back and said, do you want to call me? And he said, okay. And he called me and he told me the story of what he knew. And he said I had my fiance gave me this ancestry DNA test to find out my ethnicity. And he said, and he's mixed race. And so I think that was, for me, I'm not. And so when I saw his picture, I was like, who do we have here?
You're like, what happened?
Who do we have here?
What do we have going on here?
I knew there was something good, right?
Yeah.
And so I said, so he was looking to see what his ethnicity was. And when he did it, he didn't realize that it also gave you the option to see DNA matches. And so he was like, whoa, he started seeing names and pictures and of people because he knew nothing. And, he was adopted and had never been told anything about anybody. And so he called me and I said, well, the good news is I do this. So I'm going to be able to find out who your biological parents are. And then I said, the bad news is I'm like the best thing in this family. After me, it's like all downhill. So I don't know who you're getting, but I'm going to be in your, I'm here.
Yes.
And then I remember saying, you're going to be close. You're going to be a close relative of mine. And I said, I did a quick little bit of research and found that he matched my mom as well. So I knew he was related to me on my mom's side. And I pretty quickly knew that he was the son of my mom's brother. So he would be my uncle's son. And I was also sure my uncle did not know.
Whoa.
I was very sure.
Wow.
I don't think my uncle would have given up a child for adoption.
Right. He just didn't know that the person he was with had a child.
Mm-mm. And so I called my uncle and I basically told him, hey, this guy reached out to me. And I said, could it have been one of your half brothers? I knew it wasn't. The DNA was measuring as a full first cousin. And I knew that it was, my mom had one full brother and then she had some halves. I knew it wasn't one of the halves, but I was sort of throwing it at him. And he goes, well, it could have been Paige or it could have been Barry, but no, unless I have a son I don't know about. And the second he said it, I said, you have a son you don't know about. And he said, what do I do? And I said, you're going to be cool. What does he want? I don't even know, he's got a mom and a dad, right? But I said, you're going to answer his questions. And if he says he wants to meet you, or maybe he doesn't want to meet you, I don't know what he wants yet, but I'm like, you're going to do it. And he was like, okay, I'll do it. And they, I basically talked to, and my uncle's name is Reed. And so I talked to my new cousin and I said, this is the only person who I've, have told the person ahead of time. Like it was in my own family. So I kind of had to tell my uncle, I'm like, this is sort of what's going on. And I said to my new cousin, I said, I know who your dad is. And this is who it is. And here's his phone number. And he's expecting your call. And they talked on the phone and my uncle did amazing. He was great. He basically, answered all of his questions and kind of was like, I don't quite remember who the biological mom is.
Right.
It was 1969. I was like an 18-year-old, he's like, I don't really remember, but he did remember that there was one Latina girl. And remember, I told you my cousin was mixed
Right.
race. And so he said, I do remember this one woman, but he was like, and I said, what was her name? And he goes, I don't know her name. How would I remember that? And I said, okay, like he kind of was thinking and he really couldn't remember. And then, so of course I had to do the whole DNA research to find out who the mom was. And then, and did find out the mom was not welcoming to, she was not, she, for a million reasons, we believe, she was quickly pregnant again after with another man, and married him, and didn't want, I think her husband knew about this other baby at the time, but her children didn't know. She had older children the same age as my cousin Anthony. They didn't know. And she just was never able to, her husband did not want her to have a relationship at all or to ever meet this child again. And so she really was sort of put off by it. It was one of the few times where I've had somebody so resistant to meeting. However, her mother was still alive at like 99 years old and had known about this child and was, I'm going to meet this baby. He's a 48-year-old now. I'm meeting him, it was just, and so he did. He wasn't able to meet the biological mother ever, but he met grandma and he met her. She died about a year later, after her 100th birthday party. He was able to attend that.
Amazing.
And, but he got me. He got me as a cousin, and he's really one of my closest relatives to me. I talk to him all the time. And he's like a brother, really. Very, very close. And there is one in everybody's family. There is a person in everybody's family who is somehow looking to understand something about their biological story. And that's why I tell people, I'm like, oh, you're going to do a DNA test and somebody's going to be adopted or somebody's going to be looking for something. And you're going to be the key. Happens every time. And in a good way, I'm like, you got to kind of help these people along. Sometimes people will completely try to like hide it or, push it under the rug. I'm like, oh, you kind of can't do that. I mean, they're going to find out anyways.
Yeah.
You kind of have to be cool.
Wow.
Help them out a little bit.
What a story. What a family story.
I know. Isn't that crazy? So that's my new cousin, Anthony.
Anthony, you're the man. It's awesome.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And then you guys have such a good relationship. How sweet is that? That's amazing.
It's great.
I mean,
and it's so great too, because he's brought so much to my life. And, it's funny. He'll like text and be like, what's going on? Blah, blah, blah. And like, we'll FaceTime on Thanksgiving. I'm like, see, we missed all these Thanksgivings. All these things. Our kids are the same age. I'm like, look at now they're like cousins and they're Instagram friends and they're TikTok friends and all those things,
amazing.
I know, it is amazing.
Wow. You can never have enough love in your life. You get that.
You can't.
And regardless of how it happened, I mean, that's amazing. That's amazing.
Well, I know how it happened. I know exactly how it happened.
Of course you know how it happened. You definitely know how it happened. And it hit your own backyard, which is incredible, like.
It'll happen again. I'm sure that there are more in my family, as there are in everybody's.
So what was one of the more shocking ones that you dealt with in your work?
Oof. There was this one woman who found out that her father wasn't her father. Mm-hmm. And she asked me to find out who it was. And looking at her DNA, I could see a bunch of second and third cousins. So as I was piecing them together, I started at like great grandparents, and I build my way down and I get to 3 men. I was like, one of these 3 men are her father. And again, when I started on her DNA, I was in like Canada. That's where I was building the tree, starting from there. And I kind of end up here, and then, oh, well, look at all three brothers lived in the same state as mom.
Yeah.
And then I get to the very end, and I track these three men trying to find out which of them could be the father. And I find that one of the men had lived next door to her growing up. And so mom had been messing around with the neighbor.
Oh.
And got pregnant. And so she was literally like, I grew up next to my biological father my whole life. I used to hang out with now I know is my half sister. She was my best friend growing up. I mean, you can't make this stuff up.
That's crazy.
I know, it is super crazy. And I remember being like, wait a second, where did this guy live? And I go, it was the house next door. I go, most of the time it's people's work.
Yeah.
Most of the time people overlap. They're like, oh, we work together at the packing company, or whatever it was. And this time it was the neighbor.
Wow.
A woman who I do my podcast with, I found her biological father for her, and he was the realtor.
What? Wait a minute.
He was her mom's.
Wait a minute.
I know.
Hey, he was the realtor?
Her mom had a relationship with her and her husband's realtor and had an affair, and she was conceived. And when she asked me to, again, I find her biological father, and I go, I wonder how her mom came about this guy. Where'd you find this guy? Was it work? Was it whatever? And I found out that he'd been a realtor, and I said, I bet you he was the realtor. I bet you that's how she met him. And I'm not kidding. That ended up being what it was. And I go, you know what? Those realtors, it used to be like the milkman.
Yeah.
Right? Now it's the realtors.
You gotta watch out for those realtors, man.
I'm telling you.
It's a hot market right now, too.
It is. I'm in the Bay Area, so San Francisco took a little hit, but now it's on fire again.
Yeah. It's literally. Yep. So these people hooking up with each other and stuff.
My God, it was crazy.
Wow. I mean, you're just getting hit with like crazy story after crazy story, I know.
But you know what? This is the thing too, is it's a story of, all of them are a story, and because you never know what people are going to find. There's so much chaos and family drama and people who are involved that have no part of it, that it's like they have an opinion, but I'm like, you're not even part of the story, move off a little bit. And people that have their opinions about whether or not you should find biological family or leave them alone, there's a lot to say about it. But in the end, the more empathy you have for each other in all parts of this, the easier the process goes. And some people come into these with great coping skills and a huge support system around them, so they can sort of take on these things. And then you run into people who don't, and it can be very difficult to finish sort of the story or the process when you're working with people who just can't cope at all. They don't have the resources emotionally to deal with it, so it could be a little bit difficult to wade through that. But the sort of the end of the story is just be kind, really be nice to each other. Because like I say, you're going to have one in your own family, or you're going to want to know something one day. And it doesn't matter what you find. Again, like with the example of the guy who found a father who was a murderer.
Yeah.
You don't know what you're going to find, but just be kind and be cool about it. And it makes it a lot easier, because it is every family dynamic has this in there. Every religious group, every racial group, every socioeconomic group. It doesn't matter if you're educated or not educated. It doesn't matter. It's everywhere. And you can't really go into it with a lot of biases, because it will come back. Like people are like, oh, I don't got this in my family. I know my whole entire family tree. I go back to Napoleon. I'm like, yeah, no, you don't. No, you don't. Oh no, people are so sure about their family story. And I go, I can tell you right now that it would be a miracle if there was not something wrong in your family tree.
Right. If it was just a straight line, no
No way.
delineation, that doesn't seem
No.
possible. I mean,
It's impossible. I mean,
yeah.
I have a pretty good family tree and I have the DNA to match it, so I can track pretty far back. I can see, oh, I have a DNA match. I mean, they're like a seventh cousin, but they also have my seventh great grandfather in their family tree, so that's a hit. Like they got there their way. They got there by making their family tree. I got there by making my family tree. We get to the same person and we match by DNA. It's probably a pretty solid match.
Yeah.
But there is no clean tree. There's
Wow.
not.
There's no
So
clean trees, people.
no. Oh no, there's not. Don't think there is. Or
No, no.
I'll find something in yours.
She will find it. She will
I
find
will
it.
find it.
Christina, thank you so much. This is pretty amazing, actually.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, I'm actually one of the crazier episodes of like information finding out and stuff. Great stories, just amazing. You're amazing. I love the work you're doing.
Thank
You're
you.
helping people. You're welcome. You're
Yeah.
helping people, and that's
I
what
am.
it's all about.
It is. It
So
is.
thanks for being on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.